Ernest Hancock. I'm publisher of freedomsphoenix.com and Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock. I'm on 3 national networks. We're spreading the message, and I've been an activist since 1988. For 22 years I've been doing this. So it's so refreshing to be in a place, and over the last few years, to see that the youth has come in. There was a big concern for a long time that the youth were lost, that they were just so indoctrinated by the mandatory youth indoctrination camps known as a government school system, that they weren't going to be able to extract themselves from it and find freedom in their own head. But I knew that they would, because I was them, years before. And with the internet, there was an ability for them not only to find each other, but to communicate with each other instantaneously and bypass the controls, the system that was put in place by the government schools, the government licensed media, the government propaganda, so that they could be able to just discover the truth on their own. Because the truth will get discovered. It's just how fast, and would there be a critical mass reached? Well, I think it's starting, if it hadn't already happened. We're going to see in America and a world that's going to be totally different than what we see now within a few years. I can't imagine it going a decade. As the economy, as the government falls, as it demonstrates its weaknesses, there will be the youth, the young people that will rebuild this. Because they're already, and here the agorism, the anarchy, the libertarianism, the whatever you want to call it, it's all about people that just want to be left alone from those that just won't leave them alone. And that simple concept is being expressed here, and it's being demonstrated here, and people will start to flood in. It's getting exponential how fast this is growing. So I've always had the faith that it was coming and did what I could to help it, and it's satisfying to see it happen without them ever even hear about me. So it's going to happen no matter what, and I'm doing what I can to just help it. A lot of times in communicating with my audience, it's, freedom's the answer, what's the question? And the reason was because I was these young people before. I went around and I would ask a lot of people that were very learned in the libertarian movement, because I was looking for my own political home in my head anyway, and I kept asking, yeah, but what about? But what about? What about? And there's always the same questions a lot of people ask about the proper use of government. Do we have a need for it? We're so afraid, boo-hoo, I'm afraid government comes save me, to the point that finally the freedom answer was always the question. I mean, the freedom answer was always the answer to the question. So I go, oh, I get it. After about a year of that, I go, oh, I get it. Freedom's the answer. What's the question? And that's really held true for a long time. It's like, freedom good, government bad, 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 bad. Every time I scratch the surface. So this is, a lot of the bumper sticker sayings that I'll use on Freedom's Phoenix or in my radio show is, you're right, it's a bumper sticker and it has an explanation behind it, but it's just the summation of everything that I've come to realize in a short saying, and then of course we can elaborate on it. But yeah, that was where it came from, was just me realizing that freedom was always the answer. The other thing that I use a lot that works is in the end, freedom always wins. It just gets really messy first, and we're just really, we're going to have to prepare ourselves for the mess. But after the fall of the empire, after all this goes, they're going to try and reconstitute it. They're going to try and put a freedom label on it. They're going to try and have someone that's, oh yes, Fox News is going to tell us this is the guy that's going to bring us, to freedom or whatever. But whoever they say it is, it ain't them, whoever it is, But for the people here that are smart, that are paying attention, that have libertarianism as their core understanding, thou shalt not aggress, they're going to find the answer on their own. They're going to see that it's them raising their children. And when I was doing this a lot, I had a young family in the 90s, they were, well, Ernie, do you really think you're going to be able to accomplish and do that? I go, it's not me you have to worry about, it's my kids. So my children are now in their early 20s, like a lot of the people here. They're the threat to the man. They're the ones that have grown up in the witnessing what has happened. And my generation, born in 1961, mine was the first generation that grew up knowing the government was bad. We had Vietnam and Watergate and Iran hostage and Cold War and all this stuff. Now they'll look at it and say how bad things are, with Afghanistan and the Middle East and the oil and the war. And I'm going, It's the same headlines from when I was in high school in the late 70s. This is the same. So I see this cycle. That's why they call it revolution. Except there's one thing different this time. Before, they've always counted on us having short memories. They always counted on us not knowing what was happening, or that we couldn't go back and research what had happened just 15 years before. Well, now with the internet and the archive of all this information and the sharing of generations, oh man, they're so toast. Because it's libertarianism and the freedom orientation that people have is not a generation thing. It's a philosophy that has been built on for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And it's just now we have the technology to communicate directly with one another, instantaneously, across the world, even in different languages, by pushing a translator button, boom. The ideas that are fresh in the minds of somebody in New Hampshire are shared in their own language and someone in the mountains of China. This has not ever happened before. The counter to that is that the king, the man, whoever that is getting into our heads. They're able to, what we, for the first time, they're able to see what we think. But they are so divorced from reality, you can sit there and tell them exactly what's going on, what you're thinking, why, and they can't comprehend it. They don't understand it. They don't speak the language. The only language they speak is the hammer. And if you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and they're no more subtle than that. So that force is what is the biggest weapon against them. They're their own worst enemy, and they don't realize it. We do. Right. The one thing a lot of people don't understand, I'll talk about it tonight, is that we are far more focused on providing a infrastructure for people like you and other people here to make use of resources that, as a young activist, I used to ask the same questions. We didn't have small camcorders, okay? It was like this big giant, now you got little video pens, and clandestine clips and stuff. We were like, if we had a video studio, if we had a radio show, if we had the ability to communicate with, printing or doing flyers or brochures or making our own t-shirts or DVDs, back then VHS tapes, if we had this capacity to share the message, it would have an enormous impact. Well, as we've gotten older and accumulated more resources and have more financial support and people that like what we're doing, we've created Freedom's Phoenix, a workshop that provides those very things. People have a radio studio to do their own podcasts. I do my radio show out of there. We have a video studio. We have t-shirt making facility. We can do 300 to 500 DVDs an hour. We get 50,000 blank DVDs donated. We have our own sign production. We have our own printing press we've had since 1994. We just did a 5,000 mailing that goes out Monday. They were putting it together while I was here, that goes out promoting a lot of stuff. So this is something that we, for 15, 20 years, if we only had it, well, now we do. And we make that available. It's not what you say, it's as much as it is the freedom to say it. We create the hardware for the software up here to be able to be expressed. Even a lot of people in the computer industry, they're talking about, well, the software, this. I just see the tool as, it's just hardware. I don't care what you call it. If it gives me the ability for me to communicate more with it, that's taking this software and using that hardware to communicate. Because governments and corporate media used to have a monopoly on that capacity. They do not anymore. They are, they're flash whiz bang, fighter jets going, explosion, shock and awe intro into some show. And I go, yeah, well, I got, bang on the head from some cop and kicking little kids and doing and taking and all that kind of stuff, and I'll put that up against your computer generated crap any day. So now with the ability of broadband internet and having to communicate on something as simple as YouTube or on your own server, we now have the ability to directly compete with just truth, reality, facts. They're so toast. In the end, freedom always wins. It just gets really messy first. But we've yet to see the big mess that's coming, and it's coming. So I'm just glad to see that there's such an example like PorcFest to show how peaceful people can be, just interacting with each other peacefully and voluntarily, and all aren't.